Hello, hello, everyone. All right, so I'm definitely pet sitting again. Well, I'm a foster parent for puppies. So I have puppies, so I am downstairs in my living room. And so I told you guys I was going to come live. And so I have a really good topic for you guys today. And I'm excited about it. So I apologize for not being in my office, but I am in my living room because I have puppies that I have to babysit. Okay. Now I'm a foster parent for puppies. It gives me my baby fix. Okay. All my kids are grown and I have to have my baby fix. And so my baby fix is puppies. And they are definitely babies. They get into everything. They put everything in their mouths. It's just like having a baby. So hopefully you guys have a happy new year. Wow, 2021. Hopefully it's a good one and not like 2020, right? But today we're going to talk about, all right, a really good topic, I believe, providing services to the greatest extent possible, okay? Or we could even say, is providing services to the greatest extent possible enough, okay? So for those of you who don't know me, and if you're catching me on the replay, because I know it's 4 o'clock here on the East Coast, so on the West Coast, it's very early. So if you are new to catching me live, post a 1 below. If you're an oldie but goodie, post a 2 below. So a 1 is for you newbies. That's your first through third time catching me live. Up 2 below is for my oldies but goodies, and they know what to do, okay? So this is the page. I also have a private group where all kinds of conversations and good stuff happens. I do Q&As. I just did that on Tuesday. So if you're interested, just put into the search bar, Autism Mama Rocks the IEP group, and join the group. And it's a nice, wonderful community in which you can hopefully feel comfortable, welcome, and loved. So with that said, hi Lisa and Kim and Aaron. Hello, hello. Happy Christmas Eve. Is it Christmas Eve? New Year's Eve. All right. It's going to be New Year's Eve. Wow. I can't believe it. I'm staying home doing nada. You know, can't go out past 10 anyway around here. Hi Becca. Hi Renita. How are you? Thank you for sharing. Yes, if you want to share, go ahead and share. I'm not going to keep you guys long. I know you probably have company coming or something going on. So let's just talk about this for a second. All right. So with COVID and the pandemic and everything that's been going on, we obviously know that a lot of hardship has, hit our homes. Okay. And, not just students, but school districts, leaders, teachers, etc., have, had to be thrown into this challenging situation. Okay. And, disabilities, having an IEP, all the things that go with that, even 504s, it's just this past 9 months has been crazy. All right. And that's just to say the least. And, related services and being, in a remote learning way. You can call it virtual learning. You can call it online learning. It doesn't matter. That's just a matter of semantics. But hybrid learning, even that is still, part of online learning. And so all of it is very difficult and it creates a bunch of chaos for our kids. And most of our kids don't do very well with chaos. And so that has become a very big issue. I will first start also with the fact that my name is Raven Woods. I'm the CEO and founder of Autism Mama Rocks the IEP, and I help parents gain the knowledge and the confidence to become the CEO of their IEP meeting. And my goal is always, to teach others and then for them to obviously pay it forward. So moving forward, and not keeping you long today, challenges have been really focused on whether schools are providing special education and related services identified on your child's IEP, all right? And whether those services, okay, meet your child's needs to the greatest extent possible, okay? So legally speaking, no, I'm not a lawyer. I'm an advocate and have been for 15 years, but I know IDEA, the law, federal law, very well. And so IDEA states that the school systems have to provide your child what is needed and appropriate to the greatest extent possible. And there's been some argument on what is the greatest extent possible and is the greatest extent possible enough. Okay. And so now, and in today's time and day and age with COVID going on, that is actually a really good question, you know? So it's interesting, is it enough? I think that's going to be left to each and every individual to answer for themselves. But I have to say possibly not, because it's there's just no way that it can be delivered at all almost, um, let alone to be enough, if that makes sense. All right. So I'm just going to talk about, a couple different cases that I've found really interesting. And I'll tell you what states they're in, that sort of thing. But I think it's important for you to know, okay? And it's also why I'm in so many mediations and parents are filing for due process so much right now, all right? Because the implementation or the non-implementation of the IEP is not being delivered with fidelity, and it's not being delivered in the way it should be, meaning with the student in mind, first and foremost, and what is needed and appropriate for them, and for that to be given not only with fidelity, but to be given properly and in accordance to the IEP. And if that is not being done, then going back to the table and suggestions and everything being made by the school system and recommendations that they're required to do. How many times, ask yourself, how many times has the school system picked up the phone or emailed you and said, hey, the learning plan and the IEP and the goals in which we develop together as a team, which you're part of that team, a big part of that team, then, and they've said to you, but it's not working. All right. That's what I feel like, just be transparent. All right. Things aren't always going to go great. I get it, but be transparent. Then we can work together. Then there's that trust there, But if that's not there and you're not transparent, then there's no trust. It's lost. And when it's lost, then it's just a downward spiral. It just goes down and down and down and just gets worse. And that's the problem is, we beg, or I did, the school system to just be transparent. All right. Just be honest with me. Where is my child? What's going on? What do I need to know? What do I not need to know? Like all these things. And they say, oh, yeah, we'll be transparent. They're not. And so, that's a real struggle. It was a real struggle for me. And even though to this day, that's not happening. Now is her situation great right now? Absolutely. But do I trust the school system? No, not at all. But that's because of what they have caused, what they decided to do. And that is not advised either by IDEA. All right, so if you're joining, post a 1 below if you're new, first through third time catching me live. Post a 2 below if you're an oldie but goodie. If you're catching the replay, do the same. We want to also know where you are from so we can get to know you. All right, we're talking about, is providing services to the greatest extent possible enough? Is it happening? What's going on with that? Okay. All right. Hi, Kristen. Hi, Del Rose. Hi, Becca. Okay. So I'll give you an example. Well, first, the Department of Education, districts, so on and so forth, must ensure that your child receives services, accommodations, implementation of the IEP with fidelity to the greatest extent possible. And each student with a disability can be provided special education and related services in the student's IEP. All right. And everything that's in their IEP has to be delivered. All right. Nothing changed with COVID other than where and how. Okay. Hi, how are you? So with that said, keep that in mind. And also it states that the Department of Education further advises that the provision of FAPE, okay, may include services provided virtually, and that the law allows flexibility in determining how to meet the individual needs of a child with a disability, okay, within the procedure specified in the Act. All right. So IDEA includes no general exceptions or waivers to the IEP and FAPE requirements during physical school closures caused by the academic or government issues or anything else of the like. Okay, so everything stays the same. So accordingly, school districts remain responsible for providing FAPE to your child. That's a free, appropriate public education. All right, the key word there is appropriate. All right, free, none of us have really had that issue. Appropriate, not so much. Public, obviously, that's an obvious, and education. All right, so appropriate and then education are our two issues, the A and the E, okay? So yeah, it's important to make sure that not only is the IEP delivered with fidelity and to the greatest extent possible, but also that child being provided a modified or additional supports to address any needs related to the delivery model of online and virtual learning. So does that make sense? All right. So in their IEP, it has to be delivered to them with fidelity to the greatest extent possible. However, in addition to that, to provide that child to the greatest extent possible and in the greatest extent possible, there has to be some provisions, and the provision needs to be something that needs to be modified. More than likely it does, because students aren't used to learning online. So it's important for those provisions and modifications be put into place, additional supports and so forth, for the delivery model of virtual learning. All right, so that is something that has to be thought about as well. All right, so let me talk about something real quick. All right, I'll give you an instance, of some of these due process cases that are going on right now. So there was a complaint in California, and a parent brought, I have my notes in front of me, so you see me reading. Okay, so the parents claimed, arguing that the district denied the student FAPE when it failed to provide a direct instruction and speech services called for in the student's IEP. The 7-year-old student was adverse to distance learning, and the district provided the child packets and materials and things like that, and then would have like weekly check-ins instead of direct instruction, which was what was put into the IEP. All right, so the parents' claim was successful. All right, they won, because the district failed to materially implement the student's IEP and should have attempted to provide the services via alternative means online. Okay. The hearing officer faulted the district for failing to call an IEP meeting to address the difficulties the student was having in participating in distance learning. And I'll tell you, I deal with this all the time. This is my number one thing. All right. And this is actually the most recent California case that I've told you guys about multiple times. And this parent won. All right. And they won because what is happening right now is across the board in every state. And like I've told you guys, California is a biatch. Okay. And that is putting it lightly. All right. And I struggle with my patience when it comes to California. All right. And, it's so, so, so important. And California is a difficult state. So for that parent and other parents to be winning due process cases due to the fact that these things that I've been talking about about services and accommodations and their direct learning and their direct instruction and everything going as it should be just online. Okay, so unfortunately, instead of the teacher, walking around the classroom and teaching in front of the class or writing on the chalkboard or whatever, they're in fact just, teaching online. But I've always said that that's awesome, Sky. So that's why I've always said that teachers have to get creative. And it's so, so, so important for teachers to do that. Yes, Skylar. So, okay. Okay. Yes, it does. So, bottom line, it's so important to make sure that your child is receiving as best that can happen, equal to what they would get in the school system. All right? Because think about it like this. Even though you and I are not per se used to this online learning, it is a model that is done all the time, even in college. Mind you, it's not the ideal situation for certain people, and it's not the ideal situation in the masses for students with special needs. All right. But it is a model that is used all over all the time. All right. So teachers have become, professors and so forth in the higher education setting have become very, very, very proficient in that. Okay. Sorry, Sky's getting nice. So it's really important to understand that, and to understand the fact that if teachers get creative, have chalkboards, still write on the chalkboards, still kind of have that background of what they're doing. So if they have their camera and then they have things, Sky, I'm on a live, go take a shower. I just said I was, Sky. I am. All right. So it's important to understand that if they do things how they should, all right, with the younger kids online, having a cool background, writing on a blackboard, whatever it is that they typically do, if they can set it up like that, which they can, you can do anything on camera, okay? So if it's set up properly and they're really thorough with setting it up properly and having different things that they can show. I don't care, if it's a puppet or anything else to get a child engaged, that can happen. And there's simple things that don't cost money. I'm an educator, guys. I'm very, open to all kinds of different things. I was very animated in teaching. I was very kooky and funny, and I always like to engage with the kids. So instead of, if there's teachers out there that are monotone, and you kind of keep your voice like this and hi, Samuel, how are you? It's so good to meet you kind of thing. I always was more boisterous. I always had animations, and I would get, if they were in my class, and I would give them loves, and, so they knew that about me. And so when I would teach, it was fun, right? I think if you're having fun, you're going to learn. If you're not having fun, you're going to be bored, right? So it's important to get really, really creative. And so when you get creative, you then teach children, okay? And so it's very important to get out of the comfort zone of maybe being online or being on camera or whatever. And, I had to get over going live. I wasn't always comfortable, and, Sky will come in the room or she'll ask questions. And I've had to be okay with that. And I've had to tell people who listen to me I have a child with special needs. If she talks to me, I have to talk to her. And so that's just the way it is, and so people accept that or they don't. And in the school setting, if people and teachers and educators and service providers and all that, if they're good in what they're doing and implementing, then they know to get creative. And there are a lot of teachers that are creative. And if your teacher is not creative, I see your guys' questions. So if you have questions, go ahead and keep posting them, and I promise to respond, okay? But one thing to keep in mind, guys, is if your teachers are not creative and say your child's having some issues and struggles with, paying attention, and they're just bored out of their mind, because a lot of our kids will watch TV, maybe not all of them, but a lot of them, right? So if they're watching someone that's teaching them that's just animated and fun and, gets them engaged and all that kind of stuff, then it's something that they're going to pay attention to. After you take a shower.
I have to.
Okay.
I'm so be upset at you. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
It's saying that something it does happen. Something it does.
Yeah, it does happen sometimes. Okay, so she got in trouble. So she's telling me she's so sorry that it happened, and sometimes that it happens, and it's okay, and she can start over tomorrow. But she says that a lot. She's smart. So anyway, guys, just pay attention to that and don't be afraid to say to the teacher, on the side, because I think most teachers are open to constructive criticism. Well, they should be. All right. A good teacher is. And so you need to make sure that you say, on the side note, hey, is it okay that I talk to you? Can you hop online early or something like that? And then, because I always like a face to face. Face to face is better than the phone. You can't see someone's body language. You can't see someone's face. You can't say any of that when you're on the phone. All right. It's really good. I love Zoom because you can always see somebody and have a conversation. And so just say to them, say, hey, Samuel's really bored and, I know you're an amazing teacher. I'd really appreciate it if you could, okay, Sky, I'll get it. So then you'll say, I'd really appreciate it. Skylar, I'm going live. You need to go take a shower. Go.
I don't get upset.
Okay.
No.
Go on.
I'm sad for running up at you.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
Okay. Are you going to take a shower?
Yeah.
Okay, go.
I'll turn to that to get the that's in the car. I'll turn to that.
Yep, you did tell me that. Okay. With that said, all right, so it's just important to say that and be okay with going and saying to the teacher, could you be more animated? Could I help you come up with something really cool to do with the kids? Offer to help. Who cares? We like help. I like help. So don't be afraid to do that. All right. Especially if your child's bored, because what's going to happen if they get bored? You know? So it takes, you getting out of your comfort zone too, but open up and just say something, because maybe they don't know. Maybe they're not sure what to do. Maybe it's something that they would really appreciate you saying so that they could have the encouragement to do that. Maybe, the teachers aren't used to parents watching them either. So it's uncomfortable for them too. So just be open to being open and having a discussion on a side note, after class is done, and just suggest, hey, what can I do to help you, come up with something really creative. Samuel's getting really frustrated. I know that, if he had something go on like a puppet show that, read a book, that's a cool idea. So if you're in reading and the teacher's reading a book to the kids and then maybe asking questions afterward, maybe the book can be read by a puppet. There's different things that can go into play to keep kids engaged. So that's something to keep in mind if your child is, not learning, and those are some of the issues that could be happening. So I'm just kind of giving you guys some suggestions, but it's going to be up to you to be the voice to get that across. Okay. So California has a really good case in regards to our services enough. Okay. The next one. All right, this one's really good. In Wisconsin, a school district was found to have violated IDEA by failing to implement the student's IEP to the greatest extent possible during remote learning when, without explanation, it implemented only some of the required services remotely. How many of you are going through that right now? I know it's a lot because I hear it from you guys all the time. Oh yeah, my child gets speech and OT, 2 times a week, but they're only getting it 1 time a week online. But the 2 times a week is what's in the IEP. Well, guess what? Get that 2 days a week. Whatever it is that's in your IEP, get it. Okay? So the hearing officer, of course, the parents won, and he basically it was something that was a big deal. It is not providing FAPE to a child if only some services are provided. okay? And it's reasonable to expect that the district be able to arrange a time for the teacher to remotely, once a week, twice a week, whatever, make up that work. So that's what has to happen. The compensatory services will then need to come into play for them to make up for all of that time. So if you have only been given one time a week of direct instruction of speech because your child has speech, but your child's IEP says twice a week, but you've only received once a week, all right, then you need to add up all of those hours from when once a week started to present. And that is what the school system owes your child. Okay? All right. The next one is interesting, is failure to implement the IEP, especially when, as we described above, greater implementation appears possible, all right, can lead to adverse findings for the district, all right? So at the same time, all right, the U.S. Department of Education has also advised that every implementation lapse is not always a denial of FAPE, all right? So the things that we were just talking about of implementation of services, accommodations, and direct instruction, or minutes is a big one, all right, then that is a violation of FAPE, all right? But just know that every implementation and every circumstances is not always FAPE, all right? So that's important to remember as well. And also, I want you to bear in mind that providing services to the greatest extent possible may not be sufficient if those services are significantly less than stated on the child's IEP. All right. And the student is unable to make meaningful progress. All right. So, in a due process decision from California, all right, a hearing officer awarded a parent or a child compensatory education to the student in a community, where that was not able to happen. All right. So it was physically unable, that child was unable to learn online. All right. So providing that service would have done no good anyway. All right. So in situations like that, such as that, that's when big time compensatory services come into play once your child goes back to school, or some school districts have actually gone into the parent's home. That is not common, so don't think that that's just going to happen with everybody. And it's just important to understand that there are some children that are just not going to learn online. Not going to happen. All right. So if that is you, you need to be mindful of everything that's in that child's IEP. You need to stay in direct contact with the school. You need to hire an advocate or an attorney if possible to make sure that your child gets everything that is needed and appropriate for them. You need to make sure that there's compensatory services of everything for the whole time that that child did not receive education is made up. Okay. And yes, a lot of it can be made up during ESY as well, because you don't want to push the child to where they're in school all day, every day, past school time, for an extended amount of time, because they're going to go crazy. You and I would too. So it's just important to kind of keep that in mind. So that's where things kind of start really sucking because we have to look at things like, okay, well, you owe my child compensatory services, all right? And I get really pissed off at that. The reason I get pissed off is because when the school system owed my daughter so many hours of compensatory services, you think in your head, oh, okay, they're owning what they did after we fought for it, but they're owning what they did, right? No, they're owning what they did at whose expense? At your child's expense. I had to look at it as, oh crap, Sky's going to be in school till 7 o'clock at night because they're going to be making up what it's true. It happened because they were making up services and all summer. All right. What kills me is there's, my daughter, was in school and she got services, and, right now she's at Linda Mood Bell, but she got services and all of that kind of stuff. And then, she had ABA therapy. Well, one of the things that's very odd to me is how school systems, and I'm kind of getting off the track, but I'm almost done anyway. So, what's very odd to me, and this is something that I have been parents have contacted me because it's that time to do that. Believe it or not, I tell people don't get lax at the holidays or any other time or downtime or when school's closed, because that's the time to get your crap together. All right, get it together. I have parents, that's why I'm like getting ready to be busy again. I had like a week off, and then now I'm back on it, because starting Monday, I have a ton of, mediations next month. I have a ton of IEPs because parents, and I have a lot of 4-hour IEP makeovers. Why? Because parents are like, okay, yeah, I want to get my IEP together so that at least my IEP meeting is going to be the end of January, beginning February, and things get on track. You don't want to like wait and get things on track. You want to do it now. There's no thought process that should go into that. You want to, if your IEP is not on point, you got to get it on point right now. Okay? I don't care if it's in the middle of August. I don't care if it's July. All right? You need to get your IEP on point. And do you know they have to actually redo your IEP if your child's in an ESY, because guess what? They're in school. So, and never on your IEPs have where it says no to ESY. That is a predetermination of placement for your child. Not okay. That's a violation, procedural violation. All right. So, okay. So here's the thing that drives me nuts really quick. It drives me nuts when school systems say, oh, our ESY is only for 1 hour a day, or our ESY is only for 3 hours a day. Do you know my daughter would leave for ESY at 9 a.m. and she wouldn't get back home till 5. And that is because she was in ESY, like with services, OT, and speech. And then she would do different things. She did horseback riding camp. She did a theater camp that had general ed students as their helpers that each were paired. She did all kinds of stuff. And then she would go to her services, and then she would go to ABA, and she'd do daily living and ABA therapy for 2 to 4 hours during the day. So I always encourage parents, use the summer to your advantage to get your child's gap closed. All right. So it is not for them to make progress. It's for them to get to where they need to be on grade level. All right. So that gap has got to get closed. And so you should utilize that time to do that. And that is a requirement. No, ESY is not to have your child make a sufficient amount of progress, but you got to understand, your child is more than likely behind. So if they are, that's not progress. That's just catching up. All right. So don't get that confused. There's a big confusion with that. And progress is, surpassing where they need to be. All right. Progress is not, hey, stay on first grade level, but I know you're in 5th grade. So pay attention to that. All right. So another thing I want you to focus on is making sure that not only are those implemented accommodations, modifications, services, and direct services, and your minutes are put forth in your everyday virtual learning and plan of action for that week, that month, whatever, but I want you to make sure that it's done with fidelity. So that's a very big word in special education, done with fidelity, and people will look it up and there's different terminologies for it. But in the educational setting, fidelity means that something is delivered in a way that it is almost at perfection. All right. So fidelity in the educational field is delivering it from an expert, the delivery of an expert in that field. Okay. So if you were going to deliver just the core subjects, then that would expert would be a teacher. Okay. If it were to be speech therapy, that would be a licensed speech therapist. If that was going to be direct reading instruction, that can be from a certified Orton Gillingham reading instructor. It could be a reading specialist. It could mean a variety of different things. All right. Now, there is a big difference, all right, between direct reading instruction and direct reading intervention. All right. So there's a big difference between those two. I know we're going to have a big talk soon in reference to reading. It's actually going to be a series because it's going to be a long one. But that's really important too, is to understand the terminology. So fidelity means implementing the IEP perfectly. That's what that means. So you have a contract. That's what it is. How do you implement the contract? You abide by it to the T. All right? And it's being abided by the people who know how to deliver everything within that contract perfectly. So that's what fidelity means in the educational arena. All right? So know that it's the delivery, how it's delivered. I always talk about that. How something is delivered is more important than so many other things. All right? Because each and every one of us learn differently. And even children with special needs have a way in which they learn better. All right? And that may not be how you and I learn. It may be a different way. So another thing to keep in mind, okay, because I should do one on like things that are like, terminology. Here's another one that's a confusing one, is qualified individual and qualified individual. So I've talked about this a couple times too. So before I hop off, I'm going to tell you about this. All right. So qualified individual. All right. So a licensed teacher. That's a qualified individual. Licensed speech therapist. All right. Reading specialist. Let's just go with reading. That's my favorite subject. So we have a reading specialist. They're usually teachers, and then they get their certification in reading instruction. All right. It's not that much longer or anything like that. Typically, they have master's degrees. In most states now, master's degrees are required just to be a teacher. I know here it is. But what's important to understand is the licensing piece of being qualified has nothing to do with being qualified to teach your child. Okay? So one of them is, yes, you're qualified to be hired within the school system. The other one is you're qualified to teach my individual child because you are able to deliver his IEP with fidelity, and if there's one, a BIP with fidelity, meaning they know exactly what that IEP means. They know exactly what the verbiage and the wording means. They understand that BIP to a T. They understand what an antecedent behavior and consequence means. They understand what the plan of action needs to be if there are behavior issues. All right. And they understand the difference between the two contracts. Okay. And there is implementation that has to take place with both. All right. And understanding minutes and understanding services and all of that stuff. There's things that are put into IEPs that, sometimes speech therapists, occupational therapists, and all the service providers, they're not required to be at your IEP meeting. So when a speech therapist or occupational therapist, typically it's speech, is required to be at your IEP meeting, is typically when SLP is in your child's area of impact of disability. So it could be autism and SLP, or just SLP, which is speech. That is their their concern. All right. So a speech and learning. So if that is their issues, that's where their issues lie, is in speech, then the speech therapist is typically there. All right. Any other time, service providers are not required at your IEP, even though they will come if requested and that sort of thing. So just know that. All right. And it's important for them to be there. So I always request that. I always think that, parents should request that and make sure that that is being adhered to. Um, so just keep some of these things in mind. But one of the things that can get scary is if those service providers are not at your IEP, it's very difficult for you to know and for them to know how to implement your IEP. And a lot of times they just know their goals. A lot of times they do not see that IEP. And the times that they do, all they're looking at is their goals and their piece. So, all staff have access to whatever it is, whatever system it is that your school system uses to put in educational information, IEP information. And unfortunately, right now, it's a drop down. It's like a freaking drop down box. And it drives me insane. And because I'm always yelling at them for the fact that my child or your child, when I'm advocating for a parent, is not a drop down damn box. And on top of that, they're individual people. Individual people should not be, their whole plan of action for education be made up from a drop down box, you know? And so, I'm always big on, you better add an extra comment. You better add notes here that, well, the box doesn't allow that. Well, find a box or find a place, but that's going in the IEP. It's not individual if it is a drop down box. All right. I will lose my mind on that. So just keep these things in mind. Hopefully they're good tips for you. And, just don't feel alone. It's the end of the year. So have a really good, New Year's Eve, whatever it is you're doing. And, tomorrow is going to be a new day and it's 2021 and we're going to really hit this stuff really hard. I hope you guys are committed and I hope you're committed to, getting your child everything that they need and deserve and not being afraid of the fact that we're in virtual learning, or many of us are, or hybrid learning, and think that that's going to affect your child in getting what is needed and appropriate. Now, it may not be the way you want it to be given in the school system because you are at home, but honestly, getting it into the IEP is very important and is the first step anyway. And it starting online is fine, because it is going to carry over to the school system. So you don't want to kind of, I've seen a lot of parents get into this depression and just say, oh, I'll deal with it when they go back to school. The biggest mistake you'll ever make. So don't do that. All right. I've told parents, and even though I don't want you to get angry, I've said, you know what, get yourself riled up, get angry. And, because sometimes when we get angry, we just get things done. At least I do. If that's not you, okay, don't get angry. Don't take my advice. But seriously, it's just about whatever it is that gets you ticking and gets you moving to get things done. Do that to yourself because that's where you need to be. All right. I want you guys to have your IEPs in order. I don't want you to wait till last minute. I don't want, all of a sudden things get better and they go back to school next year and you're just getting your IEP in order. Or you got to understand too, is when you have an IEP meeting, you're not always going to agree at that time. Many of my parents that have come to me, they've already gone to an IEP. It just didn't work out. And so they were like, I can't do this anymore. What do I need to do? That's where they're at. And so then I come into play. And so you need to know that it takes time. And we're already in January. So it takes time. All right. So get to this. Hop to it. Make that a New Year's resolution if you make them. I don't make New Year's resolutions. But it's important, okay? It's really, really important because you don't want to start next year or have no ESY over the summer, or start next year and have nothing. And then you're wasting time till December to get things back on track. All right. So have a wonderful, wonderful New Year's Eve, and I will talk to you guys soon. I see your questions, but Sky's getting ready to have a meltdown, and so it's one of those days for me. So I will answer your questions, Aaron and Tess and Lourdes and Del Rose. I promise. I promise. But give me some time because she's throwing a fit up there. I'm surprised you guys don't hear her. So have a wonderful Christmas. I keep saying Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve. And I will see you guys in 2021. Have a great, great, great night.